Hi, everyone. I'm Astha Naral. I'm a security technical specialist at Microsoft. Thank you, Ron, so much for providing this platform for all of us and for having me here today. And you can see the slide I have up here. And I'm really excited to talk to you all about how Microsoft is using generative AI, right? We hear this term everywhere, and to talk to you all about how we're using it to solve some challenges that are related to cybersecurity. And let's dive right in, but I'm going to start with why we are even having this conversation, right? What brings us even here talking about it today? And the problem lies in the statistics. We see that in front of you here today, the fact that us defenders were simply outmatched. And it's quite alarming when you take a look at all of the telemetry and intelligence behind these statistics, right? So the number of password attacks that Microsoft detects has more than tripled in the last 12 months, from about 1,300 per second to now more than 4,000 per second. And then the median time for an attacker to access your private data, if you were to fall victim to something, like a phishing campaign, is now just an hour and 12 minutes. There's also a global shortage of cybersecurity professionals, 3.5 million gap, right? So we're seeing all of these challenges. And then on the attacker side, they're simply getting better. They're getting more sophisticated. They have more resources, more funding. So you can start to see how, the scales are kind of tipped in their favor. And this really paints a picture, right, of how security professionals are up against a challenge. And that's exactly, the challenge that we're here to solve with AI. But what's causing these statistics? It's sort of a multifaceted problem, right? We're facing challenges in areas that aren't just technology, but also in terms of people and processes. On the technology side, there's often a vast number of security tools that have become difficult to manage, right? It's resulted in a very complex architecture. And complexity, it can introduce more ways for an attacker to gain entry, because oftentimes you also have, that attack surface also expands. So attackers can gain entry to your environment in more ways than just one. And once they're in, complexity also makes it so that it's easier for them to evade detection. And we definitely don't want that to happen. On the human side, processes are, disconnected. Talent is often very difficult to recruit and train. And combine that with that shortage I mentioned, with all the skilled professionals lacking, we're seeing kind of this huge issue, right? So what we need is a fundamental change in how we do things, right? How do we take these challenges, the fact that we are outmatched, and we tip the scales in our favor? And the answer is we need to be able to scale, right? We need to use our human expertise strategically, and then we need to use technology that can enhance that expertise. And we need to do that with processing speeds and really rapid learning of AI. And so that's kind of where AI fits into the picture, right? We need technology that can detect patterns and behaviors, and technology that can inform us quickly with all the things that are latest and advanced when it comes to best practices in security. So AI allows us to get that real-time visibility and context, and I'll dive more into this, right? So that we can investigate threats faster, so we can become more effective and efficient. And we're going to be doing this with natural language prompts, and I'll dive into that in a minute as well. But we're going to do that with natural language rather than complex queries, and that just really tips that scale in our favor. So another note to add, right? We're also going to be able to collaborate more easily with our shared skills, right? As a result of using AI. But before I go any further, I think it's important to begin with fundamentals of what exactly is AI. We've been hearing about it, and I'm going to get into this just for a little bit here. But AI, or artificial intelligence, is a software, and it can mimic human-like intelligence. You may have heard that before already, right? Things like decision making, vision, right? Finding a certain object in an image, and then maybe even classifying it, speech and translation. And then we can use it to reason over something, right? For problem solving or even making prediction. And then the engine beneath all of that, right, that's powering that capability is machine learning. Machine learning involves training algorithms on massive amounts of data to do all those cool things that I mentioned, like making predictions and problem solving. So you see the underlying engine for AI. And then specifically when it comes to AI within AI and machine learning, there is a subset of AI, and that's called natural language processing. And this is the type of AI that, simply put, it enables computers to understand human language, right? So we're dealing with kind of language here. So that's kind of what AI is. But in order for us to actually use it as a service and leverage it, there's a whole process that I can spend hours on that. But data models are created through a process that involves collecting the data collection, selecting the right model with the right algorithm, and then you train that model, and then eventually that's deployed, right, in production to be used. So my point is there's a lot of data training, right, that goes into a model before it's deployed into production. And you may have heard of these models, GPT, GPT-4, GPT-3.5, that might sound familiar. These are models that were trained by OpenAI, but they're not the only models that exist, right? There's lots of open source models out there as well. And GPT, right, Generative Pre-trained Transformer, is just an example of large language model, LLM. And LLMs have been around for a while, right? But the key here is that GPT is a type of large language model that's going to actually generate and output content back to us, right? Like generating human language back to us. So, and that's in the name, right? As it suggests, generative pre-trained transformer. And the content that it generates can, be text-based, images, videos. But what I'm trying to kind of nail the point here is that we're talking about a subset of AI that deals with making computers understand human language and actually generating an output back to us. So that's all great. So we have these models that have been trained with massive amounts of data, but how do we actually consume this as the end user? And that's kind of where I'm going to bring in Copilot in this slide, right? So the models I mentioned are released and they're deployed. They're then accessible via API to integrate into different services. And those services can be, Outlook client, for example, or Teams client. And that's really where Copilot comes in. You can see it sitting in this wheel on the slide in the center, where all around it are all of these different services like Outlook and Teams. And so Copilot understands and knows the data and the functions based on the service that it's in, right? I mentioned Outlook, for example. So you can have Copilot in Outlook that can help you draft an email. You can have it in Teams that can help you search for a specific link that your teammate has shared with you. I personally use Copilot in Teams for transcribing, notes during a very heavy technical discussion. That way I don't have to be worried about taking notes. I can focus on the meeting and I can go back and, it refreshes my mind on a complex technical problem. So that's something that I really love. But we have all these different Copilots that pulled in different data based on the service it's in, and we interact with it by giving it prompts, right? We can ask it to reformat how it responds to us. For example, if you're drafting an email, you can say, write a professional email, and it's going to change its behavior to make sure that the email it generates back for us is professional sounding. So these tasks, right, they involve natural language processing, specifically generative AI, because we have content that's being generated back to us. But today, one Copilot in specific, since we're talking about cybersecurity, is called Microsoft Copilot for Security. I'm going to dive a little bit into that. So Copilot for Security is a generative AI-powered solution. It's a security solution, and it's used to help defend organizations against attackers. And it does it really fast, and it does it at scale, right? It provides natural language experience to support our security analysts in their day-to-day scenarios. That can be anything when they log on as, responding to an incident, hunting for threats, they're gathering intelligence. And it doesn't have to be anything reactive either. It could just be posture management. So It generates a response to a user prompt by using specific plugins, and I'll dive deeper into that, but simply put, these are just data points, right? They can be organization-specific plugins, some sort of authoritative source, and it's also our threat intelligence that's powered by Microsoft. So you have access to these things. And it's really powerful, right? Because by using these plugins and harnessing these data point sources, security analysts aren't just tunnel vision focusing on one cross section of what makes up their entire data estate, right? They get visibility, wide visibility into threats and context across all of their data estate. So that's so it's a very powerful solution. And diving into its use cases, the primary use cases are incident summarization, impact analysis, reverse engineering of scripts, and guided response. And the whole premise of this is it can take a while for an analyst to piece together what happened, right? Who was involved, what devices were impacted. And it all depends on the size of the incident, the complexity. It depends on the level of experience that the analyst has as well. So it can be very hard to understand what's in front of us, where to even get started. So incident summarization gives that context for incidents. And it also improves communication, right? Because it's leveraging Gen AI to take all these very complex alerts and distilling it into actionable summaries so that our communication in an organization is very consistent. And that's very important and it's very powerful because it enables a quicker response time, right? Which is a very key metric that all of us are tracking as it relates to our SOC efficiencies. And it also helps with our streamlined decision making. We can also assess the potential impact of security incidents, right? Which of my devices were impacted? So you get a lot of insight into your affected systems. And then you're also able to prioritize your response efforts effectively. So you probably want to start with your high value assets first. One of the coolest things, in my opinion, for Copilot for Security is it can reverse engineer potentially malicious scripts, right? Sometimes as a part of an investigation, you get this alert that has, an alert that has an execution of script, like, hey, there was a PowerShell script that was executed. So just understanding that can be time consuming, right? You can eliminate the need to do that manually with Copilot for Security because it can take those complex command scripts and then analyze it, translate it back to us in natural language. And again, with those clear explanation of actions on how to go about handling it. And I don't know, in my opinion, that's really cool. I think it just makes it so that even junior analysts can now have access to, they can be upskilled, right, in that scenario. And that works for most common scripts as well, right? Not just PowerShell that I use as an example. And we have guided response, right? So you receive that actionable step-by-step guidance for incident response, directions for like triaging, investigation, containment. Maybe you need to disable a user, contain a device, remediation, that sort of thing. And that also helps with a quicker response time. Something that's not mentioned in this slide, but I think is very important, is the reporting capability. You can create incident reports almost immediately when you use Copilot for Security. I know that writing a report towards the end of an investigation when you wrap it up is pretty standard. And I also know it can take a very long time. You need to get all the details about an incident, collect it, organize it, summarize it, not just from one, but multiple resources. So I know that can be very time consuming. So that capability and even formatting, right? We have this reporting capability that can do all of that. So I think that's also worth mentioning. So those were the use cases, but I want to highlight that, we not only can we respond to threats at faster speeds with AI, but we can also take those advanced tasks, right, like reverse engineering of scripts, and make it accessible to junior analysts, right? So we are, this is accessible to all skill levels. And then they're able to do that and discover threats and vulnerabilities across multiple threat vectors on data that's accessible in real time. and again, using natural language, not typing in complex queries. So now I'm going to talk about how, what the user experience is like with Copilot for Security. It's available in two flavors of experiences, right? There's the standalone experience and the embedded experience. The embedded experience, you can see a little screenshot on the right-hand side. What this is embedded experience is integrated with the products that are already part of the Microsoft security portfolio. So you get, with the embedded experience, the Copilot for Security button actually shows up in the portal of the solution that our customers are already using, like Intune, Defender, Entra. And if you're not familiar with these names, I just rattled off, that's okay. But the point is that the Copilot function, there is a function embedded into each of these portals and services where you don't need to become, an expert on prompting or anything like that. When you're investigating an experience and investigating an incident, that it'll automatically just fire off right on the right-hand side. You can kind of see that text description of what happened in that incident. So this is great because it meets our customers where they already are. They can continue to use the portals that they're familiar with, but it's just an enhanced experience. And then on the left-hand side, right, the standalone experience, that is a dedicated Copilot for Security portal. And here, you can start a different session based on a different interaction, different investigation, but you can actually go in there and feed it prompts, right? So you can go in there and type your questions and expect some sort of response back to you. And because there is some level of, prompting experience, and I mean in terms of hygiene, right? We want to make sure our prompts are clear and specific. But the point is that this is something that users are able to go and actually ask questions. And this is a single user experience, but you get a cross-product guidance, right? So you can get your device context, your identity context, data security context, everything in this one portal where you can actually hunt across your tech stack for any sort of alerts. And this is a example of Copilot for Security standalone experience, and just an example of what sort of prompts you can feed it, right? How can I improve my security posture? Are there any machines that are affected? Summarize this incident, right, on all those things, and you can see that it's responding to us and giving us information on the type of the level of severity, how it all started, when did it start, and those types of data. So we talked about the different experiences, but how is it gathering data? So I touched on this idea of plugins for a second earlier. And Copilot for Security, I also mentioned, works with other Microsoft security products like Defender XDR and our Sentinel SIM solution. It also works with supported third-party security products. And these are just data points. They're called plugins. All they do is they extend and integrate into, they integrate services with Copilot for Security. And these are important things, right? That's what makes this work. Things like your event logs, alerts, and policies. Copilot for Security also has access to threat intelligence. So these plugins can actually search across our Microsoft Defender threat intelligence articles, profiles, vulnerability disclosure publications. So that makes it a more enriched experience. And, I want to highlight the power of that, right? So Microsoft tracks 78 trillion signals daily, right? So we're working with a massive amount of telemetry for intelligence. And Copilot for Security has access to that. So I think that's just very powerful. That's on gathering data. Side note on permissions, I just wanted to add that it follows a on behalf of permission model, so it's not granting anyone new permissions that they didn't already have. And I just wanted to wrap up and end my session in the fact that we are guiding our work around this responsible AI principles, and they're all listed here. Since